Have you ever been in a crowded place, and just because of your appearance, someone took one look and decided you were below the line? A small word, a suspicious look, a meaningful finger gesture. Seemingly harmless, but it can open up wounds you thought you had left behind long ago. That night, at Gate C-29 of the Dallas airport, a black female CEO who was rushing to deliver life-saving medicine to a patient was asked to return to economy class, just because of her plain clothes, just because people believed she couldn't possibly be important. In that moment, Naomi Carter was faced with two choices: endure in silence, or stand up quietly to protect her own dignity and the lives that were waiting for her. If it were you between offense and responsibility, between prejudice and principle, what would you choose? This story is more than just a canceled flight. It is a reminder of the profound value that each human being carries within him or her. Join me in the story. And before we begin, if you believe that respect is something no one should be given lightly, please like, share, and subscribe to support meaningful content like this. The Dallas-Fort Worth terminal hummed with the low, tired murmur of a long day. It was late afternoon, the hour when business travelers were scribbling last emails, exhausted parents were bargaining with restless children, and airport speakers repeated the same announcements with a metallic echo that blended into the white noise of travel. Outside the wide glass windows, the Texas sun was slipping toward the horizon, spreading a soft gold over the tarmac. Dr. Naomi Carter stood quietly near Gate C-29, holding her boarding pass between two fingers. She was calm, steady, composed in a way that made her blend into a crowd yet quietly command the space around her. Her posture was upright, not rigid but grounded, as if she carried her own gravity. She wore dark jeans, a simple oatmeal sweater, and well-worn running shoes. Nothing about her hinted at wealth or power by design. She had always preferred to move through the world without fanfare. But the truth was, her life rarely allowed anonymity. At 48, Naomi was the founder and CEO of Carter BioLink, the most trusted biologistics network in the country. Her company specialized in transporting living cell therapies, custom-engineered treatments that could only survive a few hours outside a lab. Veterans, children, cancer patients, thousands of Americans depended on those deliveries every year. Today, one of those deliveries was the reason she stood in Dallas-Fort Worth Airport instead of sitting in her office overlooking uptown Dallas. At this very moment, deep inside the belly of a Phoenix Skylines aircraft parked on the tarmac, was a cryogenic transport capsule. Inside that capsule rested a personalized infusion of immune cells, engineered for a 62-year-old veteran named Thomas Reed. The therapy had a survival window of 6 hours, and they had already used 1 hour transporting it from the lab. If everything went right, Naomi's flight would land in Norfolk, Virginia, just in time for the medical team to thaw the treatment and begin the infusion that could save the man's life. If anything went wrong, one delay, one misstep, one careless error, those cells would die, and with them, the veteran's final chance. She inhaled slowly and let the breath out. Responsibility sat on her shoulders like a familiar weight, not crushing, but constant. She had grown used to the feeling. Leadership, for her, was not a crown but a burden she carried with dignity. Beside her stood Ethan Miller, her 27-year-old executive assistant. He was tall, enthusiastic, still a little too eager to prove himself. His leather laptop bag hung awkwardly over one shoulder as he checked his phone for updates from the receiving hospital. "They just confirmed," he said, looking up. "University Medical Center has the infusion bay prepped. They're tracking our flight in real time." Naomi nodded. "Good. As long as we take off on schedule, the timing holds." She spoke softly, but there was a quiet authority under her words. Ethan admired that about her, the strength that didn't need to raise its voice. A nearby family argued about boarding groups. A businessman muttered into his Bluetooth headset, his tone sharp enough to slice paper. A little girl clutched a stuffed elephant, pressing it to her cheek as she waited for her mother to finish a call. Ordinary moments. Airport moments. Naomi watched them with a soft kind of affection. She liked ordinary life. It reminded her of why she worked as hard as she did. Still, beneath her calm exterior, something restless stirred. It was subtle, an edge of fatigue, a flicker of memory, a long history of people looking at her skin before they looked at her credentials. A lifetime of being told she didn't belong in rooms she built her way into. A million moments, small and cutting, that no longer made her angry but left a quiet bruise deep inside. She had learned to live with it. She had learned to exceed every expectation. But some days, the weight resurfaced. "Dr. Carter?" Ethan's voice brought her back. "You okay?" She smiled gently. "Just thinking." He nodded, not pushing further. He'd learned that her silences often meant she was carrying memories she didn't say aloud. A boarding announcement sounded overhead. Phoenix Skyline's Flight 482 to Norfolk is now beginning pre-boarding. Priority and first-class passengers may line up at the gate. Ethan glanced at the sign and motioned toward the short priority line. "That's us." Naomi gave a small nod and stepped forward. The priority line had only 4 travelers, a man in a navy suit tapping on his tablet, a middle-aged woman in a tailored coat, and an elderly couple holding hands. The main cabin line, by contrast, stretched halfway down the terminal. As Naomi joined the priority group, she felt no pride, no sense of superiority. She simply followed the rules she was assigned. Her company policy required her to fly first class on missions involving live cell transport. The cargo was too delicate. She needed to be reachable and rested. But as she approached the front of the line, she noticed the gate agent for the first time. A woman in her early 50s with tightly pulled hair, a name badge clipped to her vest, Karen Miller. Karen looked tired, like someone who had worked more overtime hours than she could remember. Her eyes scanned each passenger with a quick, practiced assessment. When she saw Naomi, something flickered across her face, a tightening around the mouth, a narrowing of the eyes. Recognition, but the wrong kind. "Ma'am," Karen said, stepping toward her with an overly sweet tone. "The priority line is for first-class customers and elite members." She gestured toward the massive economy line with her scanner. "You'll need to queue over there." Ethan blinked, stunned. "She is first class," he said. "She has." Naomi touched his arm lightly. A quiet signal. "Don't fight this for me." Karen didn't look at the boarding pass in Naomi's hand. She didn't check the name. She didn't scan. She saw the sweater, the jeans, the dark skin, the quiet posture, and assumed. Naomi had experienced this before, in boardrooms, in conferences, in hotels. The tone changed, the air shifted, and suddenly she was no longer a CEO, but a suspicion that needed to be placed where it belonged. That familiar bruise pressed gently against her heart. She remained still, her expression neutral. "Please move to the main cabin line," Karen repeated, firmer now, as if Naomi were a child refusing instruction. Ethan's voice rose. "She." But Naomi shook her head softly. "No need," she said. Her voice was low, calm, almost kind, but there was something under it, something steady and unmovable, like bedrock beneath soil. Karen lifted her chin with a satisfied nod, already turning to the next passenger. The elderly man in the navy suit behind Naomi muttered, "Some people just don't know their place." Naomi heard it. She let it pass. She had heard worse. Ethan stared at her, anger burning in his eyes. "You can't let that slide. You can't." "Ethan," she said quietly, "I'm not upset." But she was something else, something deeper. Not angry, not surprised. Disappointed and tired. So very tired. She stepped out of the priority line with slow, measured grace. She didn't argue. She didn't justify herself. She simply walked 2 steps aside, out of Karen's reach, out of Ethan's protest. Then, with a small breath, she unlocked her phone. A soft light glowed across her face. Ethan watched her thumb hover over a name in her contacts, the CIO of Carter BioLink. His chest tightened. Dr. Carter. Please, tell me you're not thinking. But she was. She typed 6 words. Activate Solaris Protocol. Full override. Her finger pressed send. A silent gesture. A decision made without raising her voice, without confronting anyone, without demanding recognition from someone unwilling to give it. The message left her phone like a quiet spark. And somewhere in the vast, intricate network of Carter BioLink systems, something began to shift. Naomi exhaled softly, a woman stepping into the next moment without fear. This was no longer about a line, or about a tone, or even about her. This was about the chain of trust she protected for every patient waiting on her work. And tonight, that chain had been tested. She looked toward the wide airport window again. The sun was nearly gone now, the sky dimming. Inside her, the stillness returned. She whispered, barely audible, "Let's see where this goes." The terminal lights had begun their evening dim, shifting from bright white to a warmer tone that softened the edges of everything. It was the kind of lighting that made people a little calmer, a little more reflective, a little more aware of their own weariness. But for Naomi Carter, the change in brightness did nothing to soften the thrum inside her chest. Not panic, not anger, just clarity. She slipped her phone back into her coat pocket, the message already delivered and moving through Carter BioLink's internal network like a silent current. Solaris Protocol. 2 words that meant something very specific inside her company. 2 words nobody else in that terminal could possibly comprehend. And in a way, Naomi wished they never had to. "Dr. Carter," Ethan whispered, stepping closer. His voice remained low, careful. "I know you sent something. I saw the screen. Are you sure about this?" Naomi didn't answer immediately. She let the question sit in the space between them, drifting gently like dust in a sunbeam. Her silence wasn't avoidance, it was consideration. Across the terminal, the janitor cart rattled. A toddler giggled as she tried to balance on one foot. Someone's rolling suitcase squeaked every 3 steps, a small imperfection in the rhythm of the crowd. Naomi finally looked at Ethan, her expression soft but steady. "Do you know what the hardest part of leadership is?" Ethan blinked, thrown off by the change in topic. I guess making the right decisions?" Naomi nodded. "Yes, but also knowing the difference between reacting and responding." He frowned. "What do you mean?" She turned her gaze back toward the gate. Karen Miller had gone back to scanning passengers, each beep of the boarding pass sounding like a metronome marking Naomi's breathing. "There've been moments in my life," Naomi continued, "where I reacted. Times I let frustration guide my words. Times I tried to prove myself to people who had already decided who they thought I was." Her voice remained calm, even warm. But there was something else in it too, a long, quiet ache. "I learned," she said, "that people who don't want to see you won't. Not even if you stand right in front of them." Ethan swallowed. He felt every word. "So today," she said, "I'm choosing to respond, not for myself, not because of what she said, but because I saw something in her tone, in her certainty, that told me the system she works in hasn't been taught to value the people we fight for." She paused. "And we can't trust our cargo, our patients to a system like that." Ethan let out a slow breath. He understood her. Maybe not fully, maybe not with the weight of her years, but enough to feel the truth in her voice. Still, something bothered him. "What happens next?" he asked. "I mean, with Solaris?" Naomi glanced at the glowing departure monitors. Several flights were listed as delayed due to weather patterns on the East Coast. Flight 482 remained scheduled and on time for now. Solaris triggers a recall of all active Carter BioLink cargo on Phoenix Skylines flights, she said. "Our cryo units start reporting their telemetry to our Emergency Operations Center. Any container that isn't exactly where it should be gets flagged." "And this flight?" he asked quietly. Naomi's eyes softened, though her jaw tightened. If Solaris finds even one deviation, the chain of custody is broken, and we pull everything back. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. That means delays, lots of delays. It means accountability, Naomi murmured. A beat of silence. And then, from behind the counter, Karen's voice lifted slightly louder than before. Sir, you need to step back. This scanner isn't reading your pass. Please step aside. The man in front of her grumbled, his irritation rising. The scanner beeped in frantic, error-filled chirps that sounded almost panicked. Another beep, 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 beep. Karen shook the device, smacking it on the counter. Come on. Not today. A tiny ripple of discomfort passed through the waiting passengers. People shifted. People muttered. People sensed trouble without knowing why. Naomi watched the scene unfold with a strange, distant calm, as if she were seeing a puzzle piece slide into place. Ethan followed her gaze. You think, that's Solaris? It always starts small, Naomi said softly. Her voice held no triumph, no satisfaction, only inevitability. A low buzz buzzed in Ethan's pocket. He pulled out his phone, glanced at the screen, and his eyebrows shot up. It's from operations, he whispered. Level 2 alert. They detected something. One of the containers in Phoenix's hub scanned 2 minutes late on arrival. It triggered the full recall cascade. Naomi closed her eyes briefly, letting the information settle. 2 minutes. Somewhere in the Phoenix Skyline's cargo network, someone had paused a little too long. Maybe they got distracted. Maybe they took a break. Maybe they misplaced a barcode for 30 seconds. It didn't matter. In Naomi's world, precision was not a preference, it was survival. And Solaris had begun. At gate C-29, the boarding scanner abruptly emitted a sharp, continuous beep, one that made Karen physically flinch. The screen flashed red. System hold. Boarding disabled. Contact operations control. Karen frowned, tapping the screen several times. What? No, this can't be right. The couple behind her sighed. Someone groaned. A businessman slammed his laptop shut. Karen picked up the intercom phone, pressing the button with too much force. This is gate C-29 calling operations. My scanner just... She stopped, listening. Her face shifted. What do you mean the hold originated from a medical override? What override? Passengers started murmuring now. Louder, anxious. The crowd's energy changed, thickening like humidity before a storm. Naomi's expression didn't change, but Ethan saw something flicker behind her eyes, something like sadness. Is this really the right move? He asked quietly. So many people might be inconvenienced. Naomi turned toward him. Ethan. Our business moves in minutes that can save or end lives. If Phoenix cannot maintain the necessary discipline, they should not be entrusted with our cargo. Not today. Not ever. He nodded slowly, absorbing her conviction. A voice came over the airport speaker, an unfamiliar voice. Tense and clipped. Attention passengers at gate C-29. Please remain in the area. Boarding has been temporarily suspended due to a technical issue. The crowd's frustration simmered. But Naomi didn't watch them. She watched Karen. The gate agent was pacing now, one hand gripping the phone, her voice rising slightly. No, I swear I followed the standard procedure. I didn't do anything. I don't know what medical override you're talking about. No, I didn't deny any special passengers. Her voice cracked. And Naomi felt a surprising tug inside her chest. That tug again. That quiet ache. Not anger. Empathy. Karen was wrong. She had made a judgment she shouldn't have made. But Naomi could see it now, the exhaustion, the pressure, the way years of being shouted at by travelers had hardened her edges. But none of that excused what she'd done. Not today. Not with a life sitting in a silver cryogenic capsule depending on this flight. Still, seeing the panic on the woman's face, the fear, the unraveling, it wasn't satisfying. It wasn't vindicating. It was simply sad. Naomi pressed her lips together, grounding herself again. Not now. Not yet. More was coming. She could feel it. Ethan's phone buzzed again. He read the new message and his face paled. Dr. Carter? Solaris just escalated. And this is weird. Phoenix's main control tower flagged our flight. They locked its departure status. Naomi inhaled, deep and slow. The air around them shifted, as if everything in the terminal took one collective breath. What does that mean? Ethan whispered. It means, Naomi said softly, the system is beginning to understand something's wrong. She stood still. Not tall, not grand, just still like someone bracing herself for the next wave. Around her, motion blurred into background noise. The rumble of rolling suitcases, the sharp clicks of shoes on tile, the restless murmurs, and above it all, the faint hum of the airport air conditioning, steady, cold, indifferent. Naomi looked once more at the glowing tarmac outside, the aircraft waiting, the sky deepening into evening. The world had not exploded. No alarms blared, no chaos erupted. But everything had shifted. Not because she shouted, not because she demanded anything, not because she proved who she was, but because she refused to let a system built on careless judgments hold the fate of one more patient. A silent gesture. And now, the first ripples were touching the shore. For a moment, the terminal felt strangely suspended, like a held breath, like a pause between lightning and thunder. Travelers stood frozen, some looking at the departure sign that had quietly shifted from on time to status pending. Others glancing around as if the air itself had changed texture. It had. Naomi Carter could feel it, a shift in the atmosphere so subtle most people wouldn't notice, but unmistakable to her the way a physician might sense when a patient's vitals were about to crash. She had lived most of her life reading signs others overlooked, and right now, every sign pointed to unraveling. Near the gate desk, Karen Miller ended her phone call abruptly, her hand trembling slightly as she set the receiver down. Her gaze drifted across the terminal, searching for an answer she didn't have. She looked smaller now, not the authoritative airport gate agent enforcing order, but a tired woman suddenly aware of how fragile her footing could be. Ethan leaned closer to Naomi. It's starting, isn't it? Naomi nodded once, slowly. Yes. Solaris tends to move progressively. First, the scanners, then the gate access, then the cargo synchronization checks. Another breath. Next will be the network-wide halt. Ethan's eyes widened. Meaning, the entire flight? Meaning, Naomi said gently, we may not be boarding anything today. A man in a gray suit approached the counter. Excuse me, he said sharply. Why is the sign saying, pending? My wife has surgery in Norfolk tomorrow morning. We need to get on this plane. Karen straightened, pulling what professionalism she could back around herself. Sir, we're experiencing a technical hold. Operations is working on it. I don't care about your operations, the man snapped. I paid for first class. We're supposed to be on that aircraft right now. The impatience, the edge of entitlement. It was the tone Naomi had heard countless times, directed at her, directed at anyone who didn't fit someone's expectation of who belonged where. For a moment, Naomi wondered whether Karen even realized how often that tone had shaped her own behavior. Naomi felt a tug inside an uncomfortable truth. Everyone was tired. Everyone was stressed. Everyone was just trying to get somewhere. And still, some lines shouldn't be crossed. A loud crackle from the overhead speaker broke the tension. Attention passengers of Flight 482 to Norfolk, please remain at the gate area. Boarding is temporarily suspended due to an operational review. We appreciate your patience. A chorus of groans erupted across the terminal. Ethan sighed. We're going to be here a while. Naomi didn't respond. Her gaze had shifted not to the passengers, not to the gate, not even to Karen. She was looking at the airplane outside the window. the one carrying Thomas Reed's treatment. The silver fuselage reflected the dying light of the Texas sunset. She knew that inside its cargo bay, the cryogenic capsule was quietly ticking away its survival window minute by minute, degree by degree. She imagined the numbers displayed on the temperature monitor, the way the transport's thermal core hummed like a heartbeat. He didn't have time for delays. And yet, delays were here. Naomi's stomach tightened in a rare pulse of fear. Not panic fear. The fear of letting someone down. Of failing in the one place where failure wasn't allowed. Her phone vibrated gently. She pulled it from her pocket, the light illuminating her face. A message from Rhea Patel, the Chief Information Officer of Carter BioLink. Solaris engaged. Full recall initiated. Cargo match anomaly detected at Phoenix Skyline's Hub 2. Proceeding with emergency protocol. Another message popped up 1 second later. Recommend immediate retrieval of VIP cargo. Naomi swallowed, her throat suddenly dry. VIP cargo that was internal shorthand for a life-or-death transport, one where the recipient had no alternative. Thomas Reed. The 89-pound cryo capsule suddenly felt like it weighed the whole world. "Ethan," she said softly. He stepped closer. "Yes?" "Contact the crisis response unit. Tell them Solaris went to full escalation. We initiate emergency route Delta." Ethan hesitated. "Delta? That's the private jet, isn't it?" Naomi nodded. "And the escort?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "Everything." Ethan's breath hitched. This was serious. More serious than he had realized. He pulled out his phone and immediately stepped a few feet away to make the call. Naomi stayed where she stood, watching, waiting, feeling. She remembered something her mother once told her when she was 12 years old, a memory that always surfaced in moments of clarity or crisis. "Baby, the world won't always see you, but you can't let that stop you from seeing the world, its danger, its beauty, its truth." Her mother had been a nurse, a woman who worked long shifts and still found a way to speak wisdom with tired eyes. Naomi wondered what her mother might say about today, about Solaris, about Karen, especially about Karen. As Naomi watched her now, she saw something unexpected. Regret. Karen wasn't just afraid of losing her job. She was realizing something deeper, something that connected to Naomi's own lifetime of moments. She had made a snap judgment, and now she couldn't undo it. Naomi exhaled, feeling that familiar ache again. She had seen both sides of this story. She had been the one misjudged, and she had encountered countless people who acted out of weariness rather than malice. But responsibility was responsibility. Her phone buzzed again. Another update from Rhea. Phoenix Skyline's HQ requesting contact. They detect medical override but cannot trace source. Expect executive outreach. Naomi closed her eyes. There it was. The next ripple. When she opened them again, another figure was approaching the gate manager. His badge read Anthony Graves. His face was pale, tense, already carrying the weight of a dozen calls from upstairs. "Miss Miller," Anthony said to Karen, "I need to speak with you. Now." Karen glanced nervously at Naomi before following him to the side, behind the kiosk, where they thought passengers couldn't hear. But Naomi could hear them anyway, her ears trained from years of courtroom presentations and boardroom whispers. Anthony spoke in a low, urgent tone. "It came from this gate," he said. "They traced the origin of the override request to a passenger in your priority line. A VIP. Someone you redirected." Karen blinked rapidly. I redirected someone? Who?" Anthony's jaw clenched. "They won't tell me everything, but someone important is on the manifest. Someone Phoenix Skylines considers extremely high value." Karen looked confused. "I didn't see anyone like that." Anthony shot her a stare fierce enough to cut glass. "You wouldn't?" He turned his eyes toward Naomi for a fraction of a second, and Karen followed his gaze. Her lips parted, her hand slowly rose to her chest. "Oh," she whispered. Naomi didn't move, didn't look away, didn't gloat. She simply acknowledged the moment with the same quietness she had given everything today. Across the terminal, Ethan returned. His face was flushed with adrenaline. "The crisis unit is en route," he said softly. "They dispatched a rapid transport team from our Arlington site. ETA is 15 minutes. Naomi nodded. "Good." Ethan hesitated, searching her face. "You okay?" She gave him a small, steady smile, the kind that never fully touched her tired eyes. "Ask me that again when the treatment reaches Norfolk." He nodded, but the worry in his expression remained. Suddenly, the overhead speaker chimed again. "Attention passengers, Phoenix Skylines Flight 482 is temporarily halted due to a required cargo verification. Please remain at the gate until further instructions." Cargo verification. The words echoed like a verdict. Passengers groaned louder this time. A woman cursed under her breath. A young man slapped his thigh in frustration. Naomi heard it all. And inside her, conflict stirred again. Was Solaris too harsh? Was this the right moment to draw a line? Was she punishing a system, or just reacting to a single person's mistake? But then she pictured Thomas Reed, the veteran who had survived 2 tours, the man whose daughter had cried on the phone when she explained how little time he had left. Her heart steadied. No, this wasn't about Karen. This wasn't personal. This was professional, ethical, necessary. The system had failed, and Solaris was designed for exactly that. She met Ethan's gaze again. "We move forward," she said softly. "No turning back now." He nodded, exhaling slowly. "Then I guess the next step is—" He stopped as Anthony, the gate manager, approached them. His voice shook slightly. "Ma'am," he said, clearing his throat, "I've been informed that Phoenix Skylines headquarters is requesting immediate communication with you. They're escalating the matter to the CEO." Naomi's eyes didn't widen, her shoulders didn't tense. She simply breathed in and out. "Let them escalate," she replied. Anthony nodded, swallowing hard. He knew, even without being told, that this woman stood at the center of a storm far bigger than this terminal, that she had just changed the trajectory of something enormous. And yet she stood here, steady as a tree in wind. Ethan inhaled deeply beside her. "Part of me wants to apologize for what's coming," he murmured, "and another part of me kind of wants to watch it burn." Naomi gave him a gentle look of reproach. "We don't burn things, Ethan. We reveal what's already broken." He nodded slowly. And in the terminal around them, the tension continued to build quietly, steadily, inevitably. Because the storm wasn't coming. It had already begun. The tension inside Terminal C didn't explode all at once. It built slowly, like a pressure drop before a storm, like the way animals sense an earthquake seconds before humans feel the ground shake. Conversations grew sharper. Footsteps echoed harder. Even the air conditioning seemed to hum with an uneasy urgency. People didn't yet know why their flight had halted, but they could feel it wasn't a simple delay. Naomi Carter felt it too. She always had a sharp instinct for shifts, whether in business negotiations, medical emergencies, or moments of human fragility. And right now, everything around her felt like the turning point of a story no one else realized they were inside. Ethan hovered next to her, restless. He kept checking his phone, pacing 2 steps one way, 2 steps the other. "Rhea just sent another update," he said. "Phoenix's scheduling hub flagged inconsistencies and requested manual verification of all cargo on this route." Naomi nodded. "That means Solaris is feeding the discrepancies back to their system. And they think it's their issue," he whispered. "For now." Another message popped up on his screen. He blinked, reread it, and looked at Naomi with eyebrows raised high. "Carter BioLink's Arlington Rapid Team just arrived at the airport perimeter." Naomi took a deep breath. Good? Ethan asked, lowering his voice. "It's starting to feel like we declared war." Naomi turned to him. Not with sternness, but with profound calm. "We didn't declare anything, Ethan. We protected a patient. Systems that break under pressure reveal themselves." He nodded, still uneasy. His loyalty was clear, but so was his fear of what came next. Near the gate desk, Karen was back on the phone, her voice trembling as she tried to answer questions she didn't understand. "No, I didn't deny a medical passenger," she insisted. I didn't know. I thought she was." Her voice cracked again. She wasn't crying, not yet, but she was unraveling. Anthony Graves stood behind her, rubbing his forehead with his fingertips, as if trying to press back a migraine. He kept glancing toward Naomi, each time with more dread. The crowd continued to swell. Late passengers rushed toward the gate only to meet the growing frustration brewing like static in the air. "This is ridiculous," a woman snapped. "We need answers." "What's the point of priority boarding if we're stuck here?" someone else muttered. "This better not ruin my connection," another grumbled loudly. Naomi heard all of it. And she felt all of it. She had never been someone who enjoyed causing chaos. She wasn't vindictive. She had no desire to watch others suffer inconvenience. But she had long ago learned one difficult truth: the world didn't change unless something forced it to. She just wished the cost didn't have to fall on so many strangers. Her phone buzzed again. "Crisis Response Unit. Arrived at Gate C service entry. Awaiting your authorization." She exhaled, steadying herself. "Ethan," she said gently, "tell them to proceed with silent coordination. No confrontations. They need Phoenix's ground crew to cooperate." He nodded and stepped aside to make the call. Meanwhile, Anthony, the gate manager, approached her with stiff, cautious steps like someone walking toward a judge knowing the verdict would not be kind. "Ma'am," he began, hands clasped tightly. "Phoenix headquarters needs me to confirm something with you." Naomi tilted her head slightly. "Go ahead." He swallowed. "They've been informed that Carter BioLink initiated an emergency protocol affecting our cargo systems. They're asking if you can verify whether your organization initiated a Solaris security alert." Naomi didn't answer right away, not out of hesitation, but because she wanted to give the man space to breathe before she said the truth. "Yes," she said, "I did." Anthony's shoulders slumped. Not in relief, more like a man who had just realized he was standing on the wrong side of history. "So, this was intentional?" "Necessary," Naomi corrected softly. "Your cargo hub failed a timing integrity check. That puts a patient's life at risk." Anthony ran a hand down his face. "Ma'am, do you realize the magnitude of what's happening? Our CEO is calling an emergency session. IT thinks we're under a cyber attack. Operations believes our cargo network is failing. Stock analysts are asking questions." Naomi listened without interrupting. He wasn't being dramatic. He was simply overwhelmed. Finally, she said, "Your systems aren't failing, Mr. Graves. They're revealing the flaws that already existed." Anthony stared at her for a long moment. Then, quietly, he whispered, "You're the passenger she turned away, aren't you?" Naomi didn't confirm or deny. Her silence was confirmation enough. Anthony closed his eyes briefly. "God help us." Before she could reply, a new sound rang out. A shrill beep, then another. Then a long, continuous tone from the departure display. The status changed again. "Status. Hold executive review." The crowd erupted. "What does that mean?" "We're going to miss everything. This airline is a joke." A woman in a burgundy jacket marched straight toward Karen. "I need to know what's going on right now. I have been sitting here for 40 minutes, and no one has given us anything." Karen stammered through a few sentences before Anthony gently stepped between them, guiding the woman away. Naomi watched quietly. Not with superiority, not with triumph, with empathy, with sadness, and with a quiet sense of responsibility she rarely let others see. Her phone buzzed again. A call this time. She glanced at the screen. Robert Langford, Phoenix, Skyline's CEO. Ethan returned just in time to see it. His eyes widened. Are you going to answer? Naomi stared at the screen for a moment. The CEO of one of the largest airlines in the country was calling her personally. That alone said everything about the storm Solaris had unleashed. Yes, Naomi said softly. Because leadership wasn't just about initiating action. It was about owning it. She swiped to accept the call and placed the phone on speaker. Dr. Carter. Robert Langford's voice came through, deep, authoritative, clipped with tension. This is Robert Langford. Thank you for taking my call. Good evening, Mr. Langford, Naomi replied in her calm, almost soothing tone. I assume you're calling about Solaris. Yes, he said. I was informed that Carter BioLink initiated a Level 3 recall affecting our cargo network and grounding multiple flights. A shaky breath. I'm hoping there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Naomi said gently. The timing data flagged an unacceptable deviation. There was silence on the line. A silence that lasted too long. Then, slowly, he asked, and this deviation was serious enough to warrant halting our operations? Naomi closed her eyes briefly before answering. In my world, she said, 2 minutes can cost a patient their last chance at life. Robert exhaled heavily, a sound full of weight. Dr. Carter, I am sincerely sorry for whatever occurred at the gate. My staff informs me there may have been a misjudgment. A misjudgment. That was one word for it. Naomi didn't flinch. Your gate agent was not the cause. She was a symptom. Robert was quiet again. She could almost hear him thinking, recalibrating, reassessing the situation. Finally, he said, please, tell me what we need to do. Naomi breathed deeply. I'll need full cooperation from your ground team, she said. My crisis unit is on site to extract sensitive cargo. We'll transport it independently. And the flight? It should not leave until we complete the retrieval. A harsh swallow echoed from the phone. Understood. Then, softer. I only ask that you consider letting us rebuild this relationship. Naomi's voice held no anger, no triumph, only truth. That depends on what you do next, Mr. Langford. The call ended, and Naomi felt something she hadn't felt all day. A small swell of hope. People could change. Systems could be rebuilt. Respect could be taught. But it always started with truth. Not the loud kind. Not the combative kind. The quiet, unwavering kind. She turned toward Ethan. He watched her with awe and something else, fear, maybe, or admiration, or both. What now? He whispered. Naomi lifted her chin. Now, she said softly, we retrieve the cargo. The terminal continued to buzz with frustrated passengers. Screens continued to blink with warning codes. But for Naomi, everything narrowed into one moment. A choice made hours ago in silence, now reshaping the course of an entire corporation. And deep inside the aircraft outside, a cryogenic capsule waited, ticking, counting, depending on her. The sky outside the terminal had faded from gold to a deep indigo, the color of a night preparing to take over. Airport lights glowed against the windows, casting long reflections across the polished floors. People paced, people argued. People sighed into phone screens, telling loved ones they might be late, that they didn't know what was happening, that everything was just weird. But none of them knew just how strange the evening was about to become. Inside the terminal, Naomi Carter remained perfectly still. Not rigid, not tense, just still like the calm center of a hurricane. Ethan stood beside her, clutching his phone as if it were the only thing anchoring him to the ground. His breath came fast in small bursts. His mind felt overloaded, half terrified, half electrified. Dr. Carter, he said, voice low. The crisis response unit is requesting final authorization. They're positioned at the Phoenix service entrance. She nodded. Then give it. He hesitated. Are you sure? Once we do this, there's no undoing it. The airline will know this wasn't a system glitch. They'll know it was us. Naomi turned to face him fully. Her eyes were steady and warm, a strange combination of exhaustion and conviction. Ethan, she said gently, leadership isn't about avoiding consequences. It's about accepting the right ones. His throat tightened. He nodded. And then he walked away to make the call that would push Solaris from escalation to activation. Naomi remained where she was, folding her hands in front of her. Her palms were warm, slightly damp, not with fear, but with intensity. She always felt this way before a major decision. The weight of responsibility pressed lightly against her skin. But she didn't regret it. She'd made peace long ago with the fact that the world often changed only after someone refused to tolerate the unacceptable. Across the terminal, Anthony Graves was coordinating frantically with multiple departments. He spoke in sharp bursts into his radio, switching between copy, confirm, and stand by. His voice strained by the kind of panic that made even trained professionals falter. Karen, standing behind him, couldn't stop glancing at Naomi as if looking at a ghost she suddenly realized had been alive all along. The other passengers had begun forming pockets of unrest. Some demanded explanations, some speculated out loud. A few filmed TikToks, narrating the craziest airport delay ever with dramatic flair. One man even approached Naomi. "Do you know what's going on?" he asked, exasperated. "You seem pretty calm about all this." Naomi gave a polite, apologetic smile. "I'm afraid I don't have answers I'm able to give." The man scoffed. "Of course not. No one ever does." He walked away. And Naomi felt another pang in her heart, empathy, not guilt. People didn't deserve chaos. They didn't deserve uncertainty. But sometimes, moving toward justice meant temporarily disrupting comfort, something she had learned the hard way. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Rhea. It wasn't the crisis unit. It wasn't some automated system alert. It was the hospital in Norfolk. Incoming call. Dr. Helen Crow, University Medical Center. Naomi answered immediately and brought the phone to her ear. Stepping a few feet away from the crowd, "Dr. Crow," she said softly. "Naomi." The voice on the other end sounded both controlled and strained. "We're prepped and ready, but I need an updated ETA. Thomas's vitals are dipping. We can still proceed, but the window is shrinking." Naomi closed her eyes. "I'm initiating an emergency extraction of the cargo now. That will allow us to bypass Phoenix entirely." Dr. Crow was silent for a moment. "So the airline messed up," she said, not as a question, but a weary statement. "Yes." Another pause. Then, quietly, "I trust you." Those 3 words hit Naomi harder than she expected. Trust wasn't something she took lightly. It was a responsibility she carried like a fragile vial, carefully, reverently. "I won't fail him," Naomi said. "I know," Dr. Crow replied. "We'll be ready, just get it to us." The call ended. Naomi inhaled deeply. She didn't shake. She didn't doubt. She didn't crumble. But her heart ached for Thomas, for his daughter, for every patient who depended on the fragile chain of human competence that she spent her life trying to reinforce. She turned toward Ethan, who was walking back with purposeful strides. "It's done," he said. "They're entering the secured corridor now." "Good," Naomi replied. Just then, loud crackling came from Anthony's radio. "Gate C, 29. Be advised, Carter Biolink Extraction Unit approaching cargo ramp. They have legal authorization. Stand by." Anthony's face went sheet white. Karen stumbled back a step, gripping the counter with both hands. Across the terminal, the murmurs turned into questions. Travelers noticed the sudden arrival of security staff. Airport personnel rushed past with tight expressions. Something big was happening, and the energy shifted from irritation to unease. Naomi felt a pang of guilt, not because she doubted her decision, but because she understood how heavy the ripples could be. She didn't like collateral damage. But this wasn't punishment. It was protection. A moment later, Ethan's phone buzzed again. He read the message, blinked, then looked at Naomi with awe. "They've reached the plane." She nodded. Outside, the wide windows facing the tarmac, small lights moved across the concrete airport vehicles, escorting two unmarked black vans toward Phoenix's cargo bay. Passengers began pressing up against the glass. "Is that security? Is something wrong with the plane? What's happening out there?" Anthony ran over to the window and lifted his radio. "Cargo team, report." A voice crackled back. "Extraction unit has presented Federal Medical Transport authorization. We are instructed to stand down." "Stand down? Who authorized?" But another voice cut him off. "HQ did. Orders from the CEO's office. Don't interfere." Anthony lowered the radio slowly. He looked at Naomi with a mixture of fear, awe, and something like respect. As if he were seeing the quiet woman in the sweater for the first time. Ethan whispered, "This is unbelievable." Naomi didn't respond. She was watching the vans reach the cargo ramp, their brake lights glowing red against the aircraft metal. Inside that aircraft was a life. A life waiting. A life depending on her decision. Minutes passed, but they felt like hours. The murmurs in the terminal grew louder. Someone tried to approach Anthony, but he waved them off, overwhelmed. Finally, Ethan's phone buzzed once more. He tapped it open. His breath caught. Then he read aloud, voice trembling with relief. "They have the capsule." Naomi closed her eyes. Her shoulders loosened. Her hands unclenched. A single tear, uninvited and uncharacteristic, gathered in the corner of her eye. She blinked it away. Ethan wasn't as composed. "We did it," he whispered. Then corrected himself. "You did it." "No." Naomi shook her head gently. "We did it. All of us. Including the team on the ground. Including the doctor who's waiting. Including the patient who's fighting." Before he could speak again, the overhead speaker chimed. "Attention passengers. Flight 482 remains on hold due to a critical cargo verification. Please continue to stand by." It was the most careful wording possible. The kind designed to calm the masses. But calm was gone. Two passengers began arguing loudly. Someone slammed their bag onto a seat. A child began crying. Naomi felt the weight again. But she didn't retreat. She stood in the center of the chaos she had indirectly triggered, absorbing it with quiet strength. "Ethan," she said softly, "let's prepare for departure." He blinked. "Wait, you mean the private jet?" "Yes." "And us?" Naomi took one last look at the aircraft outside its silver hull, its faint reflection of the bright terminal lights, the world it held inside. "We're leaving this terminal now," she said, "before the worst of the storm hits." The terminal felt louder now, not because the volume had changed, but because awareness had. People sensed the disturbance, the energy, the hush underneath the noise. It was like walking into a room moments after an argument. Even if the shouting had stopped, the air still carried the residue of tension. Naomi Carter stood at the center of it, her calm presence strangely at odds with the rising chaos. Ethan remained close to her, glancing between his phone, the windows, and the milling passengers like someone struggling to track multiple storms at once. He whispered, "The extraction team has loaded the capsule into their transport van. They're securing it for the drive to the private terminal." Naomi nodded. "Good. Time is tight, but we still have a chance." She said it softly, but every word carried weight. A few passengers had begun filming the tarmac activity on their phones, zooming in shakily on the black vans that had arrived minutes earlier. The blue lights of airport safety vehicles illuminated the scene, flashing across the glass like a coded warning. "What the hell is going on?" someone muttered loudly behind them. Another passenger said, "You think it's a bomb situation? It looks like the FBI out there." "No," a third person chimed in, "it's medical. I bet it's some kind of emergency organ thing. Naomi's pulse tightened. She wished they weren't guessing. She wished people didn't have to feel frightened or kept in the dark. But she couldn't explain anything, not yet. Anthony Graves hurried toward her again. His face was pale, his shirt damp with sweat, his radio clutched tightly in one hand. "Ma'am," he said, trying to catch his breath. "Phoenix headquarters just confirmed. Your unit has retrieved the cargo." "That's correct," Naomi said. "And they told us," Anthony added, swallowing hard, "to cooperate fully, no resistance, no interference." "That's good," she said gently. "Your crew did the right thing." Anthony exhaled shakily and looked at her with an expression she didn't expect, gratitude, mixed with shame. He shifted his weight. "Dr. Carter, I want to apologize. For earlier. For the treatment you received. I didn't know." Naomi cut him off softly. "You weren't the one who made that choice." "I know," he said. "But it happened under my watch." A flicker of sadness touched her eyes. Not disrespect, not rage, just tiredness, the kind that came from a lifetime of similar moments. "Mr. Graves," she said, "you are responsible for your decisions, not for hers." He nodded, but the guilt didn't leave his face. Before either of them could speak again, the overhead speaker crackled to life. "Attention passengers of Phoenix Skylines, Flight 482. The aircraft remains on hold pending additional review. Please remain in the gate area." Passengers groaned loudly. A few cursed. A man slammed his fist onto the arm of a chair. Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "We should leave soon. The transport is already moving toward the private suite." Naomi nodded. "Let's go." But as she took her first step, a voice called out behind her. "Wait!" Naomi froze. She turned. Karen Miller was standing there, no longer behind the desk, no longer wielding authority, but simply human. Her face was drawn, her eyes shiny with unshed tears, her hands nervously twisting the hem of her uniform vest. She approached slowly, as if each step required effort. A woman walking toward a truth she could no longer avoid. "Ma'am," Karen said, stopping a few feet away. I realized who you are." Naomi didn't respond. She waited. "I shouldn't have spoken to you the way I did," Karen said, her voice cracking at the edges. "I shouldn't have judged you. I shouldn't have assumed." Naomi remained still. Karen's breath wavered. "I deal with so many people every day. Some are rude, some yell, some lie about their boarding class, and sometimes, I guess I make judgments too fast." She swallowed hard. "And today, that hurt someone who didn't deserve it." The terminal noise faded as people realized something important was happening. Conversations quieted. Even the rolling luggage wheels slowed as passengers paused to listen. Karen kept going, voice trembling. "I don't know why I did it. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I've been doing this job too long. Maybe I see people as lines and boarding groups instead of human beings." A tear escaped down her cheek. "But it was wrong. You were respectful, you were calm, and I dismissed you." She shook her head. "I can't take that back, but I wanted you to know that I see it now, and I'm sorry." Naomi's heart tightened. She wasn't someone who needed apologies from strangers. She had lived long enough to understand that most people didn't realize what they carried inside their assumptions, their biases, their shortcuts. Yet hearing it spoken aloud, hearing someone acknowledge the harm, that mattered, not for her ego, but for something deeper. She stepped closer, not to tower over Karen, but to meet her. Her voice was gentle. "Thank you for saying that." Karen's face crumpled again, but Naomi lifted a hand, not touching her, just stopping her downward spiral. "Listen to me," Naomi said softly. "We all have moments we wish we could redo. What matters is what we learn from them." Karen nodded vigorously, tears streaking her face. "And today," Naomi continued, "you saw the impact of one small moment. A moment that seemed ordinary, but wasn't." Karen covered her mouth, shaken. Naomi's voice held no judgment, only truth. Let this make you better, not smaller. Karen let out a shaky breath. I will, I promise. Naomi offered her a small, warm smile. Not forgiving the system, but offering grace to the person standing in front of her. Then she stepped away. Ethan exhaled softly as he followed her. That was kind, he whispered. Naomi replied simply. Empathy and accountability aren't enemies. They reached the side corridor leading away from the gate. A restricted hallway marked authorized personnel only. Anthony met them there. I got clearance for you. You can exit through here. Thank you, Naomi said. He nodded stiffly, stepped aside, and opened the door. Ethan slipped through, and Naomi followed. The heavy door swung shut behind them. Instantly, the noise of the terminal muffled to a distant hum. The corridor was quiet, the air cool and sterile, the fluorescent lights casting long shadows on the polished floor. Ethan spoke first. I didn't expect her to apologize. She didn't have to, Naomi replied. But she chose to. And you didn't, say anything harsh. Naomi paused, mid-step. Hurt people don't need more hurt, she said softly. They need clarity and dignity, even when they're wrong. Ethan absorbed that, nodding slowly. They walked in silence for a few seconds. Then he asked, Can I ask something, just honestly? Naomi nodded. Of course. Was it personal? What she did? Naomi stopped walking. She turned to him, her face calm but full of something heavy and old experience. Ethan, she said quietly, I've faced things like that my whole life. Comments, looks, doubts, gates literal and metaphorical closed without reason. She took a slow breath. But Solaris wasn't about me. Another breath. It was about the patient, about the principle, about the system that allowed a person's assumptions to matter more than their responsibility. Ethan swallowed hard. She added, If this had been about my pride, Ethan, I would have walked away and boarded the flight anyway. He blinked. But you didn't. No. Her voice softened. Because something small revealed something dangerous, and I could not ignore it. They resumed walking. Ahead was the door to the service elevator that would take them to the ground level where the black SUV waited to escort them to the private airfield. From behind them, faintly, they heard the ripple of voices rising again, passengers reacting to the next announcement. Naomi didn't turn back. Some storms weren't hers to witness. Some consequences weren't hers to manage. She had done what she needed to do. And now, someone's life depended on her next steps, not on the chaos behind her. She reached the elevator and pressed the button. The metallic doors slid open with a low chime. Ready? She asked Ethan. He let out a shaky but confident breath. More than ever. Together, they stepped inside. The doors closed. And Naomi left behind the terminal, the gate, the confrontation, the apology, the judgment, the assumptions, walking toward the mission that mattered. A silent woman in a simple sweater, carrying a decision that had already changed an airline and might still save a life. The elevator descended with a soft hum, the quiet kind that made the air feel suspended, as if sound itself didn't want to disturb Naomi Carter's thoughts. The fluorescent lights above flickered once, then steadied, casting a pale glow over the small steel box carrying Naomi and Ethan toward the restricted levels of the airport. Ethan paced lightly inside the elevator, unable to stand still. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling hard. I still can't believe what's happening upstairs, he murmured. People losing their minds. Anthony sweating like he's on trial. Karen apologizing. The whole thing is unreal. Naomi wasn't pacing. She wasn't restless. Her hands were folded loosely in front of her, her posture relaxed but grounded like someone holding a truth she'd carried her whole life. It's real, she replied softly. It's just uncommon. That's an understatement, Ethan muttered. Naomi's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but the faint acknowledgement of humor in the middle of turmoil. "In my experience," she said, "moments like tonight don't happen often, but when they do, they reveal more than they disrupt." Ethan leaned against the rail. "How are you so calm? I mean, really, if I were you, I'd be furious." Naomi shook her head gently. "Anger doesn't always serve the mission." He frowned. "But you were disrespected." "Yes," she said, "and I addressed it through the system, not through the emotion." The elevator chimed. The doors opened. A dimly lit corridor stretched ahead, smelling faintly of concrete and jet fuel. Footsteps echoed in the distance. This level of the airport was utilitarian: bare walls, marked doors, service carts, the unseen arteries of an airport that kept everything moving. Ethan stepped out first. "Transportation should be on the way." They said 3 minutes. Naomi followed, her steps slow but intentional. She looked around the corridor, not with suspicion, but with awareness. She always noticed details. The scuff marks on the floor from luggage carts, the vibration in the air from engines outside, the distant beep of a reversing vehicle. She breathed in the sterile scent of the hallway and found it strangely comforting, simple, real, unadorned. Footsteps approached. 2 Carter BioLink security personnel emerged from a side hallway. They were dressed in plain dark clothing, their badges clipped to their belts, their expressions calm but purposeful. "Dr. Carter," one of them said with a nod, "we're escorting you to the private terminal." "Thank you," Naomi replied. They began walking together down the long corridor. Outside, beyond layers of concrete and metal, the airport continued in turmoil, but down here, everything was controlled, quiet, focused. Naomi felt the shift immediately, moving from chaos to purpose, from reaction to response. As they rounded a corner, the sound of engines grew louder. A black SUV sat waiting at a service exit, its headlights casting long beams across the pavement. The vehicle was unmarked, but Naomi recognized it instantly. Carter BioLink didn't use overt branding for emergency transports. Discretion was safety. A driver stepped out and opened the rear door. "Dr. Carter," he said respectfully, "we'll take you directly to the private suite. The cryo capsule is already en route behind us." Naomi nodded and turned to Ethan. "Get in." He climbed into the SUV. Still glancing nervously around as if expecting someone to stop them, Naomi followed, settling into the seat with the grace of someone used to moving under pressure. The door closed with a soft thud. Inside, the SUV felt quiet, muted, insulated. The leather seats were cool. A faint scent of clean upholstery lingered in the air. Naomi inhaled slowly, letting the familiar stillness settle her. The driver got behind the wheel. A second Carter BioLink escort slid into the passenger seat. "We're cleared to go," the driver said. The SUV rolled forward smoothly, merging onto a narrow service road parallel to the main runway. Airplanes taxied in the distance, massive shadows slicing through the night. Ethan pressed a hand to his chest. "My heart hasn't slowed down since the gate." Naomi glanced at him gently. "That's adrenaline. It'll ease." He let out a shaky laugh. "I'm not built for this. I thought this job would be scheduling meetings, arranging travel, coordinating presentations." He swallowed. "Not. Whatever tonight is, it's all part of the same mission," Naomi said softly. "Some days are quiet. Some days require us to step into discomfort. Both matter." He leaned his head back on the seat. "Is it always like this for you?" "No," she said. "But moments like this don't surprise me." The SUV passed a small guard shack. Security personnel at the booth lifted the gate without question. The Carter BioLink authorization was already logged. The vehicle turned sharply and entered a more secluded section of the airfield. The lights here were different, paler, softer, spaced farther apart. Beyond a chain-link fence, a row of private hangars stood quietly under the deep blue night sky. Ethan peered through the window. "This feels like another world." "It is," Naomi replied. As they drove, Naomi's mind drifted not in anxiety, but in awareness. She thought about Thomas Reed lying in a hospital bed, waiting. She thought about his daughter sitting beside him, watching the clock. She thought about every patient she had ever met, whose life hung on a single delivery, a single vial, a single decision. Leadership meant more than directing people. It meant choosing courage over comfort. And today, she had chosen. The SUV slowed as it approached a discreet modern building with tinted windows and minimal signage. The Lone Star Private Aviation Suite. A space designed for people who preferred entering the air quietly, without fanfare. The driver parked near the entrance. 2 more Carter BioLink field technicians waited by the door, standing beside a rolling temperature-controlled unit designed for short-distance transport. Naomi stepped out of the vehicle. A gust of cool night air brushed against her skin. It carried the smell of jet fuel, concrete, and something clean and sharp like the scent of change. One of the technicians approached with a tablet. "Dr. Carter," he said. "The cryogenic capsule is in transit behind us. ETA is 3 minutes." Naomi gave a small nod. "And the aircraft?" "Prepped," he replied. "Pilot and co-pilot are ready. They filed a priority medical flight path." "Excellent." Ethan joined her, shoving his hands into his coat pockets. He looked up at the night sky, the stars partly hidden by airport lights, partly shimmering in spite of them. "This still feels surreal," he said. Naomi smiled gently. "That's because you're watching the world shift in real time." He turned to her. "Does it ever scare you, making moves this big?" She paused, a real pause. Not one meant for effect. "Yes," she said quietly, "but purpose should outweigh fear." Ethan absorbed her words, nodding slowly. "I hope one day I can think like that." "You will," she said. "Just keep choosing intention over reaction." Before he could respond, another black van approached the private suite. Its headlights cut across the pavement with clean lines, not rushed or chaotic, precise, controlled. The van parked beside the rolling transport unit. A technician exited the passenger door and nodded to Naomi. "We have the capsule. Temperatures are stable, secure as expected." The rear doors opened to reveal the cryogenic pod, sleek, silver, emitting a faint blue glow from its temperature indicators. For a moment, Naomi felt her breath catch. Not because of fear, not because of pressure, because of gratitude. This capsule represented a life on the edge, a life she refused to let fall. She walked toward the capsule, placing her hand gently on its surface. The metal was cold beneath her fingertips. "Hang in there, Thomas," she whispered. Ethan's voice was a breath behind her. "He's counting on us." "Yes," Naomi said softly, "and we're not going to let him down." The technician secured the capsule onto the rolling transport. Naomi stepped back, letting the professionals work with seamless precision. The pilot emerged from inside the terminal, a tall woman with sharp eyes and steady confidence. "Dr. Carter," she said, "we're ready when you are. Weather is clear, we'll get you there." Naomi nodded. "Thank you, Captain." As the transport team began wheeling the capsule toward the aircraft waiting in the adjacent hangar, Naomi felt her heartbeat steady. The fear faded. The worry softened. Purpose returned. Clarity returned. Strength returned. Behind her, the chaos of Gate C-29 still churned, unresolved and boiling. But here, the world aligned itself with the mission. Ethan walked beside her as they followed the transport team toward the plane. "Dr. Carter," he said quietly, "you really changed everything tonight." Naomi inhaled deeply, her eyes fixed on the path ahead. "No," she replied. "I simply refuse to let the system choose for me." They reached the hangar doors. The aircraft waited. The mission continued. And the storm behind them was only beginning to spread. The hangar doors slid open with a deep mechanical rumble, revealing the sleek silhouette of the Carter BioLink Gulfstream G600 waiting under bright overhead lights. Its polished surface reflected every beam, every shadow an aircraft built for speed, precision, and missions that allowed for no mistakes. Naomi Carter paused at the threshold, not from hesitation, but from reverence. She had been on dozens of emergency flights, each one important, each one carrying stakes measured in heartbeats. But tonight felt different, heavier, more personal, though she couldn't fully explain why. Perhaps it was because Thomas Reed reminded her of her father. Perhaps it was because Karen's apology had reopened old memories. Perhaps it was because the world had shifted around her tonight subtly, painfully, unavoidably. Ethan stood at her side, his eyes wide with awe. "It looks unreal up close." Naomi smiled gently. "It looks like a promise." He blinked. "A promise?" "Yes," she said, stepping forward. "A promise that we intend to keep." The transport team wheeled the cryogenic capsule down the ramp and toward the aircraft. The cold mist rolling off its metal surface glowed faintly in the light, like a fragile breath suspended in the air. Two technicians followed closely, monitoring temperature readings, checking telemetry. Every step mattered. Captain Elena Vargas waited at the foot of the boarding stairs. She offered Naomi a crisp nod. "We'll secure the capsule first. After that, we take off immediately." "Any updates from air traffic?" Naomi asked. "They granted us priority clearance," Elena replied. "We'll have an open corridor to the east coast." Naomi exhaled softly, a small relief. The capsule was lifted carefully into the plane's medical bay, where a specialized docking station waited. As the team secured it, one of the technicians called out readings. Temperature stable, core levels steady, backup systems active. "Good. Very good." Naomi stepped inside the aircraft after the capsule was secured. The interior was quiet, minimalist, designed for function rather than flash. Pale cream seating, soft lighting, dark wood accents. It felt calm in a way the airport never could. But beneath that calm, urgency pulsed. Ethan followed her in, taking the seat across from hers. He looked overwhelmed again, but this time from the gravity of their mission, not the chaos behind them. "This plane feels like another universe," he murmured. "It's a different world," Naomi said softly. "But the stakes are the same," he swallowed. "Do you think Thomas knows any of this is happening?" "Probably not," Naomi replied. "But his daughter does." Her fingers tightened slightly around the armrest. She had spoken with the daughter just last week, a woman in her 30s with soft eyes and a voice that trembled with hope she was afraid to name. "She stayed by his bed," Naomi said. "She told me she reads him the newspaper every morning. That he pretends to be annoyed but secretly loves it." Ethan smiled faintly. Naomi looked toward the capsule at the back of the aircraft. "She said something else too. She said her father believes in second chances, even when the world doesn't offer them easily." There was meaning in her voice. Ethan heard it. Before he could respond, Captain Elena's voice came through the cabin speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, prepare for departure." Ethan fastened his seatbelt immediately. Naomi did the same, her movements smooth and practiced. The engines began to hum, a low vibration running through the floor. Outside the window, runway lights glowed like a trail of fallen stars leading them forward. The aircraft began to taxi. Ethan watched the lights blur past. "Dr. Carter, can I ask you something personal?" Naomi turned her head slightly. "Yes." Ethan hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "If Karen hadn't said what she said, if she had just scanned your ticket, would you have still activated Solaris?" Naomi's breath caught for a moment, not from surprise, but from the weight of the question. She looked out the window, watching the night settle over the airport like a heavy blanket. Then she answered quietly, "No." Ethan blinked. "No? No," she repeated gently. "I don't activate Solaris unless there is a breach of trust, a breach that suggests deeper flaws. But the timing anomaly would have been flagged," Naomi said. "But I would have handled it through the standard review." Ethan frowned. "So, her behavior changed everything?" Naomi turned toward him fully now, her eyes deep, tired, honest. Her behavior, she said softly, revealed everything. Ethan didn't speak. He felt the truth in her tone, sharp and soft at the same time. Naomi's voice lowered further. I've lived my whole life being told, in ways big and small, that I don't belong where I stand, that my presence needs to be justified, that my worth needs to be proven. She drew in a slow breath. But tonight wasn't about ego. It wasn't about pride. It wasn't even about respect for me. She looked toward the capsule again. It was about respect for the people we serve. Ethan swallowed hard, emotion gathering behind his eyes. The engines roared louder. Captain Elena's voice filled the cabin. Take off, in 10 seconds. Naomi rested her back against the seat. Hold on, she whispered. The aircraft surged forward, smooth, powerful, unstoppable. The runway lights streaked past in long ribbons of white and gold. The plane tilted upward, weight lifting from the earth. Ethan pressed a hand to the window, watching Dallas shrink beneath them. Naomi closed her eyes briefly, grounding herself. When the plane leveled out, Ethan let out a breath he'd been holding for too long. We're really doing this? Yes, Naomi said softly. We are. The cabin fell into silence for a moment, peaceful but charged. Then Ethan said, I still can't believe the airline CEO called you. Naomi gave a faint smile. He had no choice. What do you think he'll do now? Ethan asked. Naomi looked ahead. I think he'll reassess his organization. Or at least, I hope he will. But will that fix things? Ethan pressed. Naomi shook her head. No, fixing things takes more than apologies. It takes accountability and change. He nodded slowly. Do you think they'll learn? She thought about Karen's face, about Anthony's panic, about Robert Langford's voice on the phone. People learn, she said, but only if they choose to. Ethan leaned back, absorbing her words. For a while, neither of them spoke. The plane soared through the night. The soft hum of the engines creating a quiet rhythm, steady, grounding, almost soothing. Naomi looked toward the capsule again. The cold mist continued to rise from its edges, glowing faintly in the cabin lights. She imagined Thomas Reed lying in his hospital bed, chest rising and falling with slow, labored breaths. She whispered inwardly, We're coming, hold on. A soft chiming sound came from the cockpit. Captain Elena appeared in the doorway. Dr. Carter, she said, we've just received updated weather reports. There's light turbulence expected over Tennessee, but nothing that will affect our timing. Thank you, Naomi said. We should arrive in Norfolk with 10 minutes to spare, Elena continued. 10 minutes. More time than she feared. Less time than she wanted. But enough. Understood, Naomi replied. As the captain returned to the cockpit, Ethan exhaled with relief. That's good news. Naomi nodded, but her mind didn't settle. The mission wasn't over. The patient wasn't safe. The lesson wasn't finished. The world has a strange way of testing resolve, not with grand moments, but with small ones that expose fault lines. Tonight had exposed many. Ethan studied her quietly. What are you thinking about? Naomi looked out the window at the dark clouds below them. I'm thinking about what happens when we land. You mean the hospital? No, she said softly. Phoenix, skylines. Ethan sat up straighter. What about them? Naomi's eyes hardened not with anger, but with conviction. Solaris wasn't just a recall, she said. It was a warning. A warning? Ethan echoed. Yes, Naomi replied. A warning that trust must be earned, that responsibility must be honored, that assumptions have consequences. She turned her gaze to him. And tomorrow, I will decide what to do with their contract. Ethan's breath hitched. You mean, you might terminate it? Naomi didn't blink. Yes, even after all this? Especially after this. The truth settled in the cabin like a weight. Because sometimes change required a quiet woman in a sweater to hold an entire corporation accountable. The plane continued eastward, slicing through the night. And the world Naomi left behind at Gate C-29 was already beginning to tremble. The aircraft cruised smoothly above a blanket of clouds, the night sky stretching endlessly around them. The cabin lights were dimmed now, casting a soft amber glow over the polished surfaces and quiet seats. Outside the windows, only the distant shimmer of city lights and the steady flash of the wing beacon punctuated the darkness. For a few long minutes, there was silence, deep, steady, almost sacred. Naomi Carter rested her head against the seat, eyes half closed, letting the rhythm of the engines calm her pulse. She wasn't sleeping. She couldn't. Not when the most important outcome of this night had yet to unfold. Across from her, Ethan shifted uncomfortably, glancing between Naomi and the window. "You're awfully quiet," he said gently. Naomi exhaled slowly. "Silence helps me think." Ethan leaned forward a little. "Can I ask what you're thinking about?" She hesitated, but not out of secrecy, out of the weight of memory. "Everything," she admitted. "Tonight. The gate, Solaris, Thomas, the contract, my team, myself." "That's a lot," Ethan murmured. "Yes," she said. "It is." A soft turbulence rolled through the cabin, just enough to make the glasses on the side table tremble. Ethan gripped the armrest. Naomi didn't flinch. But inside, something tightened like an old scar aching under a sudden shift of weather. She looked down at her hands. "I thought I had outgrown moments like the one at the gate," she said quietly. "After all these years. After all these rooms I've stood in. After all the work." Her voice softened. "But bias, no matter how small, has a way of reminding you that your progress doesn't always travel with you." Ethan swallowed. "You didn't deserve what happened." "No one does," Naomi replied. "And yet, it still happens." The turbulence smoothed out. The hum of the engines deepened. Ethan drew a breath, as if preparing to share something. "Can I tell you something personal?" he asked. Naomi nodded. "I wasn't raised around people who looked like you," he said, "or people who had to fight because of who they were. My world was sheltered, comfortable, but working for you has made me see things differently." He looked down at his hands, fidgeting with his fingers. "Sometimes I worry I still miss things, that I don't see the whole truth." Naomi's expression softened. "Awareness isn't perfection," she said gently. "It's a choice, one you've made." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "I don't ever want to be part of the problem." "You're not," she said. "Not when you're willing to learn." For a moment, warmth settled in the cabin, a small island of connection in the middle of a long night. Then a chime sounded. The cabin lights brightened slightly. Captain Elena Vargas appeared beside them. "Apologies for the turbulence," she said. "It'll be smooth from here on. We've just received updated transit times. We're still on track." "Thank you," Naomi said with a nod. As the captain returned to the cockpit, Ethan exhaled. "She makes it sound so easy." "She's trained for it," Naomi said. "And she takes it seriously." Ethan nodded. "Like you." Naomi didn't respond at first. She stared ahead, letting Ethan's words settle deeper than he intended. "Responsibility is never easy," she said finally. "Or simple." A beat. "Especially when the world watches you differently." The lights dimmed again. Naomi leaned back, closing her eyes not to shut out the world, but to let her mind settle long enough to think clearly. She thought of Karen's trembling apology. She thought of Anthony's panic. She thought of the weight in Robert Langford's voice. She thought of Thomas Reed lying in a hospital bed, believing in second chances. Then, unexpectedly, an older memory rose, one she hadn't invited. She was 16 again, standing in the hallway of a mall in Atlanta. She remembered the bright white floors, the echoing chatter, the cold air-conditioned breeze brushing against her skin. She remembered holding her first paycheck, a crisp envelope she'd been proud of, one she had earned stocking shelves and cleaning aisles. She walked into a small electronics store to buy a calculator for school. She remembered the clerk. She remembered his voice. She remembered the exact words. "You can't afford that. Try something cheaper." He didn't ask her budget. He didn't ask what she needed. He decided for her. And she remembered how small she felt, how unnecessary she suddenly seemed, how invisible. Naomi didn't let the memory linger, but she didn't push it away either. It was part of her, part of the road that had led her here to this moment, in this plane, making choices no one else could make. Ethan noticed the shift in her breathing. "You okay?" "Yes," she said softly. "Just remembering." "Remembering what?" "How it feels to be underestimated," she said. "How familiar it still is." Ethan lowered his gaze with quiet understanding. The plane hummed onward. "Dr. Carter," Ethan said after a moment, "do you ever get tired of all of it?" Naomi opened her eyes. "All the time," she admitted. "But tired doesn't mean done." He nodded slowly. "You're strong." She smiled faintly. "Strength isn't the absence of fatigue. It's what we choose despite it." Ethan let the words settle. A soft beep sounded from the medical bay. Naomi was on her feet instantly, not panicked, but sharp. One of the technicians checked the screens. "Core temperature shift, 2 degrees. "Cause?" Naomi asked. "Minor turbulence earlier may have disrupted the stabilizer," he said. "We can adjust manually." The technician worked quickly, fingers flying across the interface. Naomi watched the capsule carefully. The blue mist pulsed, then steadied as readings corrected themselves. "Back to normal," the technician confirmed. Naomi exhaled through her nose. "Good." Ethan stepped closer, worry etched across his face. "Is everything okay?" "Yes," Naomi said, "but this is why precision matters. Why systems matter, why trust matters." He nodded, understanding. As the technician returned to his station, Naomi stayed where she was, her hand resting lightly against the side of the capsule. "You're going to make it," she whispered to the patient inside. "We're right here." She stayed like that longer than she intended, steady, reassuring, grounded. Then she returned to her seat. Ethan looked at her with quiet admiration. "You really care about him." "I care about all of them," Naomi said. "Every person we serve, every life we touch. It's why Carter BioLink exists." "And why you're so relentless," Ethan said. Naomi allowed herself a soft smile. "Yes, that too." Another stretch of silence passed, comfortable this time, reflective. Eventually, Ethan asked, "Do you think the public will hear about what happened at the gate?" Naomi inhaled deeply. "Eventually," she said, "but not from me." His brows furrowed. "Why not?" "Because I'm not the story," she said. "The lesson is." He leaned back. "You always think in layers." "I have to," Naomi replied. "When the world isn't always built for you, you learn to see every brick." The intercom chimed again. Captain Elena's voice floated through the cabin. "We're crossing Kentucky now. Estimated arrival in Norfolk is 57 minutes. Ethan's shoulders eased. "We're going to make it." "Yes," Naomi said softly. "We are." But even as she spoke the words, she felt another certainty rising inside her. When they landed, and Thomas Reed was safe, and Solaris was concluded, and the mission was complete, she would make a decision about Phoenix Skylines that would reverberate far beyond a single flight. Because tonight wasn't just about one patient. Tonight was about a system, a culture, a choice. And Naomi Carter was done letting others choose for her. She folded her hands in her lap and watched the clouds drift beneath them, soft, endless, ever-moving. A quiet storm of resolve grew in her chest. The world would change after tonight, and she would make sure of it. The Gulfstream G600 descended through a thin layer of clouds, its wings cutting silently through the cool pre-dawn air above Norfolk. The sky was shifting dark navy, giving way to faint streaks of silver, like the world itself was preparing for something delicate and irreversible. Inside the cabin, Naomi Carter sat with her hands clasped lightly together, elbows resting on her knees. She was leaning forward slightly, her breathing steady but deeper now, focused, controlled. But near the surface, a quiet storm moved. Ethan watched her carefully. She hadn't spoken much in the last 20 minutes. She didn't need to. Her silence said everything. The intercom clicked softly. "Dr. Carter," Captain Elena Vargas announced, "we're beginning our final descent. The hospital transport team is already in position on the tarmac." "Thank you, Captain," Naomi replied, her voice calm but firm. Ethan exhaled, part relief, part nerves. "This is it." "Yes," she said. "The final stretch." He looked toward the cryogenic capsule, the cold mist still rising in soft waves, its monitors glowing pale blue in the dim cabin light. "Do you ever get used to this?" he asked. "This intensity? These nights where everything feels like it's hanging by a thread?" Naomi shook her head gently. "You don't get used to it. You learn to respect it." He swallowed. "Respect it?" "Yes," she said, "because every mission is a life, and life deserves reverence." The plane dipped lower, the sound of the engines deepening. Naomi's mind was already ahead, moving through the next steps, anticipating every possibility: the ground crew, the secure transfer vehicle, the hospital's sterile corridors, Dr. Helen Crow waiting with the surgical team. Every face, every detail. But behind those thoughts, behind the logistics, there was something else, something heavier. The memory of Karen's voice shaking, the pain in Robert Langford's tone, the ache of being underestimated again, even after all these years. It lingered like a bruise you forget until you touch it. The landing gear thumped softly beneath them. Ethan straightened in his seat. "We made it." Naomi didn't answer. Not until the wheels kissed the runway with a soft, decisive jolt. Only then did she breathe the words, "Yes, we did." The engines wound down. The plane taxied toward a quiet corner of the airfield, where a team in dark jackets waited beside an ambulance-like transport vehicle bearing the University Medical Center emblem. As soon as the cabin door opened, a rush of crisp morning air spilled inside. Naomi stood, smoothing her jacket, and stepped into the soft gray dawn. Ethan followed, blinking against the cool breeze. Dr. Helen Crow was already there. Her blonde hair was pulled into a tight bun, dark circles under her eyes, betraying a night without sleep. Yet her presence was solid, steady, like a pillar refusing to yield. "Naomi," she said, voice tight. "Thank God." Naomi stepped forward and shook her hand. "How's the team?" "Ready," Helen replied. "Prepped since 3 a.m. The OR is sterile and waiting." "What's the capsule temp?" "Stable," Naomi said. The technicians rolled the cryogenic pod down the ramp with careful precision. Helen checked the readings on its control panel, her shoulders easing as she scanned each line. "Good," she murmured. "Everything looks good." Ethan moved closer, watching the exchange between the two women, two leaders carrying different kinds of weight, both equally unshakable. Helen turned to Naomi again. "We're moving as fast as we safely can. If traffic stays clear, it will," Naomi said. "I coordinated a police escort. They're already deployed." Helen paused, studying her friend's face. "You look exhausted," she said quietly. "And you look worried," Naomi replied. Helen didn't deny it. "Let's get moving," Naomi said. "Thomas doesn't have minutes to spare." The transport team secured the capsule inside the medical vehicle. Naomi climbed in beside it without hesitation. Ethan hesitated at the door. "You coming?" Naomi asked. Yes. "Of course." Helen climbed in after them, closing the doors. The vehicle lurched forward, siren off, lights flashing, purpose cutting through the morning quiet. The city unfurled around them, empty streets, shuttered storefronts, flickering traffic lights that glowed in the pale dawn like tired guardians holding the night at bay. Inside the vehicle, Naomi kept her eyes fixed on the capsule. Ethan sat opposite her, stealing glances between Naomi and Helen. Helen's voice cut through the silence. "Naomi?" "Yes? Are you sure you're okay?" Naomi looked up, not evasive, but honest. "I'm tired," she said, "and there was more weight on tonight than usual." Helen nodded slowly. Something happened. Naomi didn't explain everything. "Not yet," she simply said. "A breach of trust." Helen's jaw tightened. She knew those words carried layers. A police cruiser pulled ahead, lights sweeping the street in bright arcs. The transport vehicle sped behind it, weaving through early morning intersections cleared in advance. Ethan watched Naomi's face, calm, steady, but shadowed by something deeper. "Dr. Carter," he said softly, "when this is over, when Thomas is safe, what will you do?" Naomi inhaled slowly. "I'll finish what I started." Before Ethan could ask more, the transport vehicle turned sharply into the hospital entrance. A team of nurses and surgical assistants waited behind sliding glass doors. Naomi stepped out quickly, her boots hitting the pavement with purpose. The capsule was wheeled toward the hospital entrance, fog swirling around it in pale curls. People parted as Naomi passed, some recognizing her, others simply sensing her urgency. Inside the lobby, bright white lights greeted them. Floors gleamed, machines hummed. A hospital waking up for another day, another cycle of fear, hope, loss, and miracles. Helen led them through a restricted corridor. Ethan hurried to keep up. "Feels like another world in here." "It is," Naomi said. "Is it strange?" he asked quietly, knowing that someone's entire future depends on this moment. Naomi looked at him with a depth he hadn't seen before. "Every life depends on moments," she said. "Most people just don't realize which ones matter." Helen pushed open the final set of double doors. The surgical team waited, scrubbed, masked, ready. The anesthesiologist checked a monitor. A nurse prepared instruments. The air felt thick with focus. Naomi stood at the threshold. The capsule's docking station connected to the OR equipment with a soft hiss. The surgical team gathered around. Helen rested a gloved hand on the pod. "We've got it from here," she said gently. Naomi nodded, but she didn't move. "Not yet." "Naomi," Helen said again, softer. "You did your part. Let us do ours." Naomi's eyes glistened just barely. "Bring him home, Helen." "We will." Helen disappeared behind the OR doors as they closed slowly, heavily, sealing off the world behind her. Naomi stood still, listening to the faint beep of distant monitors, the muffled movements of the surgical team, the quiet heartbeat of a moment suspended in time. Ethan touched her arm lightly. "Dr. Carter." She turned her head toward him. "This is the part," she said quietly, "where there's nothing left to do except wait." He nodded. "Is waiting the hardest part?" Naomi looked at the closed OR doors. "No," she whispered. "Wondering what comes after? That's the hardest part." They stepped back into the hallway. A long bench sat against the wall. Naomi lowered herself onto it, not collapsing, but settling with the grace of someone who had carried too much weight for too long. Ethan sat beside her. The dawn outside grew brighter. Inside, the world stood still. Naomi folded her hands, closed her eyes, and breathed. Tonight had tested her. Tonight had shaken her. But tonight had also clarified something deep inside her. When the surgery was over, when she had done everything she could for one man's life, she would turn her attention back to Phoenix skylines, and she would not waver. Not now. Not after everything the night had revealed. The OR doors remained closed. The sun crept higher. And Naomi Carter waited for the outcome that would define everything that came next. Hospitals had a way of distorting time. Some minutes stretched endlessly. Others vanished without warning. But the hour after a life or death surgery began. That was the kind of hour that felt like the world forgot how to turn. Naomi Carter sat on the bench outside the operating room, hands intertwined so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. Yet her expression remained composed still, controlled, unreadable to anyone who hadn't learned to see the tremors beneath her calm. Ethan Miller sat beside her, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. He kept glancing at her, as if trying to decipher the thoughts behind her steady gaze. He finally broke the silence. "You look like you're somewhere else." Naomi didn't look at him. "I'm everywhere," she said softly. He nodded, understanding something he couldn't name. "Do you want to talk? About the gate? About the airline? About anything?" Naomi inhaled slowly, her voice steady but tired. "Talking won't change what happened." "No," Ethan said, "but it might help." She turned her head just slightly, studying him, weighing how much of herself she could allow him to see. Then she said something he wasn't expecting. "I wasn't angry, Ethan." He blinked. "You weren't?" "No," she said quietly. "I was disappointed." She didn't elaborate right away. Her eyes drifted to the sterile white hallway stretching ahead of them, its fluorescent lights buzzing softly, its floors gleaming with the reflection of a world trying desperately to stay clean. "I've spent 2 decades building a company that saves lives," she continued. "I've been in rooms full of people who doubted me. I've had investors question my competence before they even read a proposal. I've had board members try to speak over me, only to repeat my ideas back to me as if they were their own." She paused, her voice low but firm. "But never, not once, did I allow myself to believe that someone's careless judgment could still hurt me." She exhaled. "Tonight reminded me that it could." Ethan leaned back against the wall. "I guess I never thought someone like you would still have to deal with things like that." Naomi gave a soft, humorless laugh. "Someone like me?" Ethan flushed. "I just mean, you're powerful, influential, accomplished. And black," Naomi added gently, not accusing, just naming the truth he was circling. Ethan swallowed. "Yes." Naomi looked up toward the ceiling, her voice calm and real. "Power doesn't erase prejudice. It only makes the moments quieter and sharper." A nurse walked briskly down the hall, clipboard in hand, slippers whispering against the floor. Naomi watched her pass, then returned her gaze to the OR doors. Ethan pressed on, carefully. "You know, when we were in the air, you said you'd decide what to do with the Phoenix contract when this is over." "Yes," Naomi said. "And now?" he asked gently. "Do you know?" Naomi didn't answer immediately. She folded her arms across her chest, as if grounding herself. "There's a principle I've lived by my whole career," she said. "Something my mother taught me." "What's that?" Ethan asked. "That dignity," she said, "is not something you negotiate. It's something you protect." Ethan sat with that for a moment. "So you think Phoenix crossed a line tonight?" "No," Naomi said softly. "One employee crossed a line. The company let her." Ethan nodded slowly. "And letting it happen means they allowed the system to fail." Naomi turned toward him, meeting his eyes. "This isn't just about one bad moment," she said. "It's about what happens the next time someone makes a small assumption, and the next, and the next. Because one careless action tonight could have cost a man his life." Her voice deepened, steady with conviction. "And I will never allow my company or my patients to be vulnerable to someone else's negligence." Ethan breathed in. "So you're terminating the contract?" Naomi didn't blink. "Yes." Silence settled again, but not an empty one. It was the silence of decision, of direction, of a line drawn cleanly and irrevocably. After a moment, Ethan cleared his throat softly. "Can I ask you something a little personal?" Naomi gave him a small nod. "Does it ever get lonely?" he asked. "Being the one who always has to decide, the one who can't afford to react emotionally, the one who carries all the weight?" Naomi looked down at her hands, her fingers tracing the edge of her palm. "Leadership is lonely," she said, "but intention keeps me from feeling alone. I don't understand, Ethan said. Naomi looked up, her eyes steady. When your purpose is clear, loneliness becomes less of an ache and more of a responsibility. Ethan absorbed her words slowly. He wanted to ask more, but a sudden movement caught his eye, the OR doors shifting, just slightly, as a scrub nurse stepped out and walked toward them. Naomi stood immediately. The nurse offered a gentle, tight smile. They've begun the main graft. Everything is progressing well. Dr. Crow asked me to let you know the capsule was flawless. Naomi's shoulders eased. Thank you, she said softly. The nurse returned to the OR. Naomi sat again, this time with a faint tremor in her breath, as if relief had loosened something inside her she didn't realize had gone taut. Ethan noticed. You okay? Yes, she said. Better. He studied her for a moment. Dr. Carter. Yes? When you were talking about the past, about being underestimated, did you ever think of quitting? Or leaving the field? Naomi gave a small smile, wistful, but sure. Of course, she said. There were days when I questioned everything. Days when the world felt so heavy I wondered if I was meant to carry anything at all. What changed? Ethan asked. A moment, Naomi said simply. What kind of moment? She looked at the OR doors, her voice softening into memory. My father was in the hospital, she said. I was 18. I watched a nurse hold his hand during a difficult night. She didn't know I was watching. She didn't do it for an audience. She did it because she could. Ethan's breath stilled. That night, Naomi continued, I realized something, that helping is a choice. That dignity is a duty, and that if the world wasn't willing to make space for me, then I would build my own space. She took a slow breath, and I would fill it with people willing to do the same. Ethan swallowed hard. That's powerful. No, Naomi said gently. That's purpose. They fell into silence again, but it felt different now, less heavy, more connected. Minutes passed. Then 20. Then 30. Finally, Naomi rose to her feet, not because she heard anything, but because she felt something shift in the air. The OR doors opened. Dr. Helen Crow stepped out, removing her mask. There were faint creases around her eyes, signs of exhaustion, but there was something else too. Relief. Naomi took one step forward, her voice barely above a whisper. Helen? Helen smiled, a slow, tired, grateful smile. He made it, she said. The surgery was a success. Naomi closed her eyes just for a second. Her shoulders lowered, a breath leaving her chest like a weight releasing. Ethan let out a shaky laugh. Thank God. Helen stepped closer. It was tight, Naomi. Tighter than I'd like. But your team's timing was perfect. The capsule was pristine. Naomi nodded, grounding herself. Can I see him? In recovery, soon. He's stable. Naomi placed a hand over her heart. Thank you, Helen, she whispered. Helen touched her arm. No, Naomi, thank you. Ethan stood beside them, his eyes bright with pride for Naomi, for their team, for the mission that had felt impossible just hours earlier. Naomi looked toward the OR, toward the closed doors that now held life instead of fear. And she knew. Tonight wasn't just a rescue. It was a beginning. A beginning that required her to return home and finish a fight that had started at Gate C-29. But for now, just for this small slice of morning, she allowed herself the rare grace of relief. The sun had begun its slow climb over Norfolk, washing the hospital in soft amber light. Long shadows stretched across the floor of the recovery wing as nurses moved with gentle purpose, adjusting monitors and whispering updates. The world inside felt different now, lighter, more fragile, like the air after a long, relentless storm. Naomi Carter walked beside Dr. Helen Crow through a quiet corridor, her pace steady but her shoulders no longer rigid. She wasn't relaxed, not yet, but there was a looseness in her posture that hadn't been there during the flight or the long, suffocating wait outside the OR. Helen glanced at her. You should sit down for a minute. You haven't rested at all. Later, Naomi said softly. I want to see him first. Helen nodded. Then let's go. They turned a corner, approaching the recovery room where Thomas Reed was resting. A nurse stood at the door, her expression warm. He's stable, she whispered. Still unconscious, but his vitals look strong. Thank you, Naomi replied. She stepped inside quietly. The room was dim, lit by the gentle glow of monitors and the soft dawn pressing against the partially drawn blinds. Thomas lay in the bed, connected to careful lines and tubes, his chest rising and falling with steady, rhythmic breaths. Naomi approached him slowly. She didn't touch him, didn't want to disturb anything, but she placed her palm flat on the side rail of the bed, grounding herself. You held on, she whispered. We held on together. Ethan, who had been lingering near the door, took a slow step forward. His voice was low, reverent. He looks peaceful. He is, Helen said softly. For the first time in days. Naomi allowed herself one long breath relief, filling her lungs with something close to gratitude. Nights like this were rare, even in her world. Nights where every barrier, every setback, every flicker of bias and danger and chaos had still led to life. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the moment settle deep inside her. But peace never stayed long. Not for leaders like her. Her phone vibrated. She opened her eyes. Helen saw the shift. Work? Yes, Naomi murmured. Something I need to take. She stepped quietly into the hall, Ethan following behind her. Once they were alone in a quiet alcove near the windows, she answered the call. Naomi. Riya Patel's voice came through calm but carrying a tremor she tried to hide. I've been waiting for your update. The surgery was successful, Naomi said. Thomas is stable. Riya exhaled, relief flooding the line. Good. Thank God. And now, I assume we move to the next phase? Yes, Naomi said. Her tone shifted firmer, colder. It's time. Ethan straightened beside her. Riya didn't hesitate. I'll prepare the materials. Send them to my tablet, Naomi replied. We're not delaying. Riya paused. Naomi. There's one more thing. Robert Langford has contacted the office 3 times since sunrise. Naomi's jaw tightened. Let him wait. I thought you'd say that, Riya whispered. I'll hold them off. Naomi ended the call. Ethan watched her carefully. You're really doing it? Yes, she said, and I'm doing it today. He moved a little closer. Aren't you tired? Yes, she answered softly. But responsibility doesn't wait for rest. He nodded slowly, respectfully. Naomi walked toward the large window at the end of the hall. The sky outside was pale gold now, the city still waking, unaware of everything the night had carried. Ethan joined her after a moment. You know, he said, when I first started working for you, I thought I understood leadership. Naomi gave him a small smile. And now? Now I realize I didn't understand anything, he said. Not the weight, not the decisions, not the way a single moment can shift an entire system. He paused. And I don't know how you carry all of this. Naomi's voice was gentle. By remembering why it matters. He waited, sensing there was more. It matters, she said softly. Because every broken system stays broken unless someone refuses to accept it. She turned her gaze toward him, steady, unflinching. Last night wasn't about me being disrespected. It was about a company showing me exactly how deep their cracks run. Ethan swallowed. You think it's systemic. I know it is, Naomi said. If an employee at the lowest level feels empowered to make assumptions that put lives at risk, then the culture above them allowed it. Her words were quiet fire. And Carter BioLink will not be tied to any system that treats dignity as optional. Ethan nodded, a flicker of admiration crossing his face. What will you say to Robert? He asked. The truth, Naomi said simply. Clear, direct, unapologetic. Just then, Helen walked toward them, her expression warm but tired. "He'll be asleep for a few hours," she said. "But I'll call you the moment he wakes." "Thank you," Naomi replied. Helen touched her arm gently. "You did good tonight." Naomi shook her head. "We did good." Helen smiled. "Get some rest, Naomi. Even warriors sleep." When she left, Ethan glanced down the hall. "She's right. You need a break." Naomi lifted her chin slightly. "I'll rest when the work is done." "Isn't the work done?" he asked. She gave him a look that was soft, but filled with iron. "No, not yet." Ethan hesitated. "Do you want to go somewhere quiet, maybe outside?" Naomi thought for a moment. "Yes," she said. "Fresh air might help." They walked through the hospital's side exit, stepping into a courtyard filled with early morning birdsong and the gentle rustling of leaves. A fountain glimmered under the rising sun, its soft splashes echoing through the empty space. Naomi took a deep breath. The air was cool, tinged with the scent of damp earth and something hopeful, the kind of air only dawn could create. Ethan stood beside her, hands in his pockets. "Looks peaceful out here." "It is," Naomi said. For a moment, a beat passed. Then another. Finally, Ethan asked, "Do you ever wonder if you're too hard on yourself?" Naomi didn't answer right away. She watched the ripples in the fountain, the water reflecting the slow birth of daylight. "When the world demands you be twice as good," she said quietly, "you learn not to settle for half measures." Ethan nodded. "But it's okay to breathe. To be human too." Naomi's lips curled in the smallest smile. "I am human, Ethan. But the world doesn't always grant me the space to show it." His expression softened with real understanding. "Then maybe that's why Thomas surviving matters more than anything else," he said. "Because it means tonight the world didn't take anything from you. You won." Naomi turned to him, surprised. "Won?" "Yes," he said, his voice steady. "The patient lived. The mission succeeded. And you didn't allow someone else's prejudice to define the outcome." Naomi let his words settle deep inside her chest. He was right. She hadn't thought of it that way, but he was right. "I suppose it is a kind of victory," she murmured. "It's more than that," Ethan said. "It's proof." "Proof of what?" "That dignity," he said, "is stronger than bias." Naomi inhaled deeply, moved in a way she hadn't expected. For a brief, quiet moment, the world felt still. No emergencies, no contracts, no battles waiting at her door. Just morning light, soft air, and the promise of choices still ahead. Then her phone vibrated again. She looked at the screen. Robert Langford. Ethan saw it too. "Are you going to answer?" Naomi studied the name for a long moment. "No," she said finally, "not yet." "Then when?" he asked. "When Thomas wakes up," she said softly. "Not before." She slipped the phone into her pocket. Because, for once, Naomi Carter would allow herself to prioritize something deeper than responsibility. She would prioritize the human moment. The moment a man opened his eyes and realized he had been given another chance. Only then, with that clarity, would she face the storm that waited back in Dallas. The morning sun had climbed higher now, its warm light spilling across the hospital courtyard where Naomi Carter stood breathing in the crisp air. For a moment, the world felt suspended, resting in that quiet space between exhaustion and clarity. The storm behind her had passed. The storm ahead waited, gathering force. But for now, she let the stillness settle into her bones. Ethan Miller watched her from a nearby bench. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. He could feel the shift inside her, the way her composure no longer came from pressure but from purpose. Something had changed after the night's chaos. Something deep. A glass door opened behind them with a soft click. Naomi turned. Dr. Helen Crow walked toward them, her face tired but brightening with each step. "He's awake," she said. Naomi's breath caught hope rising like a sudden flame. "Can we see him?" she asked. "Yes," Helen said. He asked for you specifically." Naomi didn't wait for more. She strode toward the door, Ethan hurrying behind her. Inside the recovery wing, the lights were warm and gentle. A nurse guided them through a long hallway lined with closed doors. Naomi's pulse quickened not from fear, but from something quieter: gratitude, relief, humanity. The nurse stopped at room 214. "He's alert," she said softly, a bit groggy, but responsive. Naomi nodded, then stepped inside. Thomas Reed lay propped up slightly in the hospital bed, his breathing steady. His skin was pale but warm, and the faint smile forming on his lips carried more strength than any monitor reading could measure. He turned his head. "Dr. Carter," he whispered. Naomi approached his bedside. "Thomas," he blinked slowly, taking her in. You came all this way?" "Of course," Naomi said softly. "We weren't going to leave you behind." He chuckled, a rough, weak sound, but real. "I knew you'd pull something off, but my daughter, she told me what happened. The flight, the recall, everything." He swallowed, his eyes softening. "You saved my life." Naomi shook her head gently. "You fought for it. We just helped you win." Thomas smiled again, slow, tired, grateful. "Thank you for not giving up." Naomi reached out and lightly touched the side rail of the bed, grounding herself. "You matter, Thomas, and people who matter deserve protection." His eyes glistened. "Then promise me something," he murmured. "Anything. Don't let people like the ones at that gate make you doubt your worth." The words hit deeper than she expected. "Not tonight," she whispered. "Not ever again." Ethan stepped closer. "Your daughter is in the waiting room. She'll be in soon." Thomas nodded, closing his eyes briefly as if the news was another form of relief. "Good. She needs to know I'm okay." Naomi let the silence settle, gentle, healing, human. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The true end of the mission, the reason every difficult decision had been worth it. But she also knew this moment marked the beginning of the next challenge. She leaned down. "Rest now, Thomas. We'll talk again soon." He smiled, drifting back into sleep. Naomi stepped quietly out of the room, Ethan following close behind. When the door closed behind them, she let out a long breath, a breath she'd been holding for far too many hours. Helen squeezed her shoulder. "He's safe. You did it, Naomi?" "No," Naomi said softly. "We did it." Helen smiled. "Go. Get some food, some sleep, anything." Naomi shook her head. "Not yet. There's one more call I need to make." Helen raised an eyebrow. "Phoenix?" Naomi nodded once. Helen's expression shifted, respect mixed with the knowledge of what Naomi was about to do. "Then go," Helen said. "Finish it." Naomi walked toward a quiet family conference room at the far end of the recovery wing. It was empty. The morning light spilling across the table and the chairs pushed neatly in, like the room had been waiting just for her. Ethan lingered in the doorway. "Do you want privacy?" "No," Naomi said gently. "Stay. You've been with me through all of this. You should hear it too." He nodded and stepped inside. Naomi closed the door behind them. The room fell silent. She sat at the table, pulled out her phone, and scrolled to the name she had been avoiding all morning. Robert Langford, CEO of Phoenix Skylines. A man whose company had nearly cost a patient his life. A man who wanted answers. A man who was about to get them. Naomi tapped call. The phone rang once, twice. Then, "Naomi," Robert answered, breathless. "Thank God. I've been trying to reach you for hours." "I know," Naomi said, her voice calm, clear, unshakable. "I heard the patient made it," Robert said quickly. "I'm relieved, truly relieved. And I want you to know we've already drafted a complete overhaul of our training systems. We're suspending." "Robert," Naomi said gently, "I need you to stop talking for a moment." Silence. Absolute. Naomi folded her hands on the table. "What happened at gate C-29?" she said slowly. revealed a problem that runs deeper than one employee, deeper than one manager, deeper than one airport. She continued, "When bias can reach the boarding gate, it means it already infected the corporate culture above it." Ethan watched her, breath held. "Your company's negligence," she said, "jeopardized a life. Not because of one intentional act, but because of a system that allowed assumptions to override protocol." Robert's voice came out smaller now. "Naomi, I understand how serious this is, and I want to fix it." "I know you do," Naomi said, "but fixing it begins with accepting accountability, not excuses." He exhaled shakily. "And your contract?" Naomi didn't rush her answer. "Carter BioLink," she said, "will honor a 90-day structured transition in good faith for all incoming medical shipments. After that, our partnership ends." On the other end, Robert inhaled sharply. "Naomi, please." "It is final," she said softly. "This is not retaliation. It is responsibility." He tried again. "Let us show you we can change." "You will change," Naomi said, "but not on the backs of my patients." Silence again. Then Naomi added, her voice soft but edged with steel, "And if you truly want to fix your system, start by listening to the people at the bottom, not the ones in the boardroom." Robert swallowed audibly. "Thank you for telling me the truth." Naomi's tone softened, but she didn't waver. "Good luck, Robert. For your company's sake, I hope you use this moment well." She ended the call. The room felt still air, thick with the weight of choices and consequences. Ethan spoke first, his voice gentle. "That was something." Naomi leaned back in the chair, letting the silence hold her for a moment. "It was necessary," she said. He nodded. "How do you feel?" She thought for a long moment. Then she said, "Clear." Ethan smiled a little. "You did the right thing." "Yes," she said. "But doing the right thing doesn't make it easy." He nodded. "So what now?" Naomi looked out the window toward the rising sun, toward the city, toward the world waiting to be shaped. "Now," she said softly, "we go home. But first," she added, standing up, "I'm going to sit with Thomas's daughter. She deserves to know everything is okay." They walked out of the conference room, each step filled with a quiet strength neither of them had possessed the day before. The hallway felt brighter now, the air warmer, the world lighter. For Thomas Reed, it was the first morning of a new life. For Naomi Carter, it was the first morning after a necessary reckoning. And for the world around her, whether they knew it or not, it was the morning after a quiet black CEO rewrote the rules of respect with one silent gesture that canceled a flight and uncovered an entire culture's fault lines. Not with anger, not with noise, but with certainty and dignity, the kind that changes things, the kind that echoes, the kind that heals. Naomi Carter's story reminds us that sometimes the smallest prejudices reveal the biggest cracks in systems we think are perfect. A disrespectful word can hurt more than just one person. It can have consequences for an entire organization, even costing lives. Naomi did not choose to react with anger. She chose to react with responsibility, principle, and the calmness of someone who knows her values. In life, we often face moments of being underestimated, misunderstood, or taken for granted. It's not about avoiding them, it's about how we rise from them. We can choose silence to keep our peace temporarily, or we can choose courage to protect our values forever. Message for mature audiences. Asterisk. Your worth is not in how others see you, but in how you handle adversity. Asterisk. Respect is not a privilege. It is the foundation upon which trust is built. Asterisk. A healthy system starts with small, right actions, even when no one sees them. Asterisk. And sometimes, to change an entire corporation or an organization, all it takes is one person to dare to say, enough is enough. Naomi's story isn't just about power, it's about dignity. And dignity, once protected, can heal even the seemingly impossible. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this emotional story. If you believe the lessons of dignity, respect, and courage are worth spreading, please like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel to continue my journey of telling stories that touch the heart. You are the driving force behind this kind of insightful content. See you next time.